Welcome to TAMA Talks, brought to you by the Torrance Art Museum Advocates. I'm Janine Madden, current TAMA president, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Today's talk will feature work currently on view at the Torrance Art Museum. Baker's Dozen is on view in the main gallery. It's a survey show of 13 artists whose work made an impression on the curators in this last year. These 13 reflect current directions in Southern Californian contemporary art practices. The show closes on Saturday, June 17th, so be sure to stop by if you're in the area. TAM hours are Tuesday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., and the museum is located at 3320 Civic Center Drive in Torrance. Because it is a municipal museum, it's a program of the City of Torrance Cultural Services Division of the Community Services Department. Admission to the museum is free. However, donations are appreciated and accepted. So you can find the TAM on the web at www.torranceartmuseum.com. This TAMA Talk will be recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel along with all of our previous talks. You can get to it from our website, www.tamadvocates.com. Today's special guest artist is Deborah Lynn Irmas. She lives and works in Santa Monica and received her Bachelor of Fine Arts from UCLA and continued her studies with a 2-year degree in surface pattern design. Starting out as a fashion illustrator and then a graphic designer, she has spent the last 10 years working with the accomplished artist Tom, is it Wudl?
Yes, Wudl.
Wudl as her mentor. So we are really excited to have you with us today. And before we start, I just wanted to thank you for being a part of TAMA as a member artist. It really means a lot to us to have the artists that TAM shows be part of TAMA. Much of our funding goes for artist stipends or transportation costs, getting things shipped in for shows, and just generally supporting the needs of TAM, the TAM staff. So we really, really appreciate your membership. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to take advantage of some of those benefits. You get a complimentary beverage at our opening receptions and priority seating at panel discussions. And we also have that really cool curator-led walkthrough on the Friday before the show's open to the general public.
Thank you. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to take a look and see, we're going to take a look at the work that you have in Baker's Dozen this year. And let you talk a little bit about the piece.
Okay, well, my work has always been informed by the materials that I grew up with. I grew up with a seamstress mom and a dad who owned a men's clothing store in downtown LA. And I was really just constantly surrounded by all these materials and textiles and yarn, and I definitely developed an appreciation for all these materials early on. In art school, I started working with yarn and resin, and kind of got into mixed media and collage, and it's pretty much how my whole art history has been. And I'm working with yarn now, but don't consider myself a fiber artist. It's just another material that I'm using along the way. I usually work with different materials, and then what happens is there'll be an accent material in a series, and then that accent material ends up being the focal point of the next series. And what's great about that is I'm never out of ideas. There's always something new that I'm excited about, and then I want to, learn about its properties. And during the pandemic, I was working on these like large scale collages, and the accents I had in those pieces were these little pieces of crochet. And eventually I kind of got excited about the crochet and decided I wanted to start this series. So that's how it sort of came to be. And as I started working on these, I had, during the pandemic and after, I had been thinking a lot about my family and my upbringing. And my mom was an immigrant. She came to this country from El Salvador. And, you know, she had, you know, broken English and she wasn't educated. And there was a lot of bigotry at the time for many years. And we just grew up in a family where no Spanish was spoken and she had to become Americanized. And that side of me, that side of our heritage was just kind of, you know, put to sleep. I didn't even know any, I never even told anybody that half of myself was Latin. I just didn't want to. My mom's name was changed from Violetta to Violet. And I think something about the severity of the pandemic even brought this up more for me. And so when I started these pieces, I kept thinking about my mom. She was a big crocheter. And I was excited to start working with these materials. And as I was working with them, they really came to life. They are very, I use like vibrant colors in this series. My mom had a very vibrant personality. And it almost wasn't my intention. It just kind of came through me. And you know, I was kind of disconnected to that part of myself. So this has been a really bittersweet series for me. I wanted this piece that you're seeing on the screen, they're all titled Respectable Burden of Silence, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm doing another one right now, which will be the 5th. And this one was the second one in the series. And I think of these as paintings. I don't think of them as fiber art. I thought about putting them on the wall, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted the canvas. The canvas is a very respectable material, and that's why I used it. And I wanted the yarn to be very free and loose and to not be sewn together. And so this combination of this like formal canvas that's very respectable, it's holding up this kind of loosely put together with safety pins, all these loose pieces put together. And from an artist technical standpoint, that was what I wanted to do, mix the classical with the expressionistic. But also I felt like it was saying a lot about my upbringing and this my heritage, and these kind of loose pieces are being held up by this formal canvas.
And this is a large piece. This is 80 by 49 inches.
Yeah, it's a tall piece.
Where is it? Where is it in the gallery when you walk in?
When you first walk in, the first 2 pieces, right on the very first wall. Yeah.
Great. That's
a
perfect location. Excellent.
It's a great location. And the backgrounds, these, you'll see the second piece also, these 2 pieces have fabric backgrounds, but I have others that I also paint. And there's always a two colors I use, and it kind of ends up symbolizing my kind of, some days I feel a quarter Latin and other days I feel 3/4, you know, American, you know, it's kind of have both sides. And so that is also part of the series.
Are the crocheted pieces from fabric that's already been crocheted that you have taken pieces of, or do you actually do the work, the yarn work yourself?
Well, both.
Oh.
There's a lot of vintage pieces. Well, first of all, there's vintage yarn. I can get a lot of balls of vintage yarn, but there's also a lot of new yarn, and there's new good yarn and new cheap yarn. I just whatever hits me. There's in the last piece that you had up, there's a vintage vest in there. That green is from the 70s vintage vest that I saw. Yeah, that I saw in a store, vintage store. There's some corduroy in there to the right is, yeah, and also
Here,
the red and blue, yeah, that were vintage bell bottoms, like from the 70s. And so it's all a mix and match. I started crocheting last year. When I started this series, it was small. The pieces were different, but it was all crocheted. I had been working really large during the pandemic, and I was tired, and my arm was hurting me. These were big pieces. And I decided I'm going to work small and get to know the yarn. And so I started doing the crocheting, and it just got out of hand. I could not do it all. I was going to the stores, but I still wanted to get more crochet. So my stepmom, who's also somebody with a person good with her hands and is from the Philippines and has broken English, kind of keeping this whole thing in the family.
sure.
She offered to help me. And we kind of have a system now where I tell her the stitch, the size of the stitch. And so she's been doing a lot of the crocheting, and then when she's not doing it, I'm getting it in the stores usually. Yeah, the pieces got too big, and I needed too much material. I can't do it all. So
Yeah, did the inspiration keep coming as you created? I love the idea that there's a piece then from this, well, this is number 2.
yes.
And so does that mean that you would select a piece from this that would be in number 3, and then number 3 would have a different piece that would show up in number 4?
Well, no, it's more not from piece to piece, but from series to series. So let's say I worked on this series for years, and I keep it, like in this piece, there's a chain in there. Let's just say I become obsessed with chains and start putting them in the pieces, and then I decide, okay, my next series is going to be all chains. I get excited. So I may work on this till the end of my days. I have no idea how long a series will go. It's until I've completely lived through it. But when I'm kind of done, there is usually some element. It could be the safety pins. It could there's something will come my way and that will excite me, and I will, it could be the corduroy. I don't know. I don't know, because I'm so into this series. I feel I have years and years left to continue. So I don't know.
So is it so then the fabric material, the crocheted pieces in a series, are they similar, or are they the same in a series? So is it when you exhaust that supply of material that you have, or can they change? And so that number 5 may not contain any of these same elements, or are they cohesive in that you can see bits and pieces in each one in a series?
Yeah, they're cohesive. For a series, they'll all be cohesive.
Okay.
And there's another one, a number 3 that is different. The background's painted, and it's you can tell it's from the same series, but it has a lot more fabric in it. But they are cohesive. Yeah, I wouldn't jump into a completely different material until I was, done.
And how did Max decide, or how did you decide which ones to include?
Well, I sent in 4 and Max picked 2. He was gonna pick 1 or 2 and he picked 2. And those are
Okay,
2 that he chose. And I was really happy with the 2 he chose. I didn't have them in my studio hanging next to each other, and I didn't realize how good they would look with their colors next to each other. So
yes, he has quite an eye for that kind of
uh,
thing,
I
so
mean,
he is
yeah.
amazing. Tell us a little bit about the title.
Well, the title is, yes, Respectable Burden of Silence. And I guess to me, it's self-explanatory. This burden of our whole family, and when Max came to my studio and I started to talk about my mom, I actually started crying. I had to stop. It's so close to me, that I felt so sad, uh, to know that she had to hide herself for so long. And um, uh, the only way I felt like I somehow needed to get these to be respectful. And the only way I could do that was with canvas. And the title is that it's Respectable Burden of Silence, that we've had this burden and a disconnect from like that part of my identity. But they're respectable now. They're being shown, people are seeing them, and we're getting the respect.
And you feel that the addition of that more traditional piece of canvas, like you called it earlier, that classical painting aspect, you felt that that sort of elevated it to?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, because they're loosely put together with safety pins. They're, in general, fiber artists usually put things, their wall hangings. I don't think of myself as that person. I do think of these as paintings in my brain. I could not ever get what I wanted to get with a painting. This, yarn is kind of a seductive material, and I wouldn't be able to get that with painting. But my mom was also a painter later in life, and it was important for me. Yeah, it was very important for me to have the canvas, and I do feel that people ask me a lot about it, but I'm pretty definite on it. It gives it something else, and it holds it all together. So
It does, and this is equally as large. This is 80 by 56.
yeah, yeah.
Equally, and would you say then that the majority of pieces that you do are of that size, or do you do any smaller work?
I do. The series last year was all quite small, and maybe like 12 by 14. And then this series is large, and I'm going to do some more even larger ones. But I do have medium-sized ones that are maybe 48 by 60 that I work on. Also, this particular way of working, it requires large. I have to do these large. The smaller ones have more paint on them, are within the series, but a little different. These that you're seeing all have to be very large to work.
And you paint the backgrounds as well?
On these two, these are fabric.
Oh, fabric. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Fabric, vintage, like this green of this is vintage fabric. It's shiny, kind of almost like, hate to say it, but almost like disco fabric. You're not seeing it until you see it in person. It has some marks and scuffs on it. I also like that element of vintage things. I don't want them to be too perfect. I think about that, and when I go look at old fabrics. The top is kind of this flat bubblegum pink, like pleathery vinyl. But I do, in the series, I do paint I also have others, just Max did not pick those. I have others that have painted backgrounds that work the same way, two colors.
And is this piece of fabric a piece of this or something different?
No, that's velvet. And I also in the top left corner, that's all Scotch tape. That's tape. That's white tape. That's fringe that I made.
Oh, my. Okay. And these white elements, these linear.
Yeah, that's silver, and they're like these vinyl pieces. And everything I didn't mention one other thing. Everything is glued down, and it's glued down with a syringe, a very tiny syringe, and it's glued in a way that I wanted the viewer to think that it was just thrown together the way you think, let's say, Jackson Pollock, which wasn't really the case, but the way you think an artist just kind of threw things down. And that I wanted the viewer to feel like, oh, this is just kind of just thrown over the canvas and voila, you know. But they're not. They're carefully curated. There's a lot of glue, and when you go up close to them, you cannot see where anything is glued. And it's not. I've left a lot of areas without glue because I didn't want it to be too flat.
Sure.
But that keeps it from drooping, and all the cord you see on the right side of this piece, that's everything is glued, everything's stapled down. There's
and that was my you actually must have read my mind, because that was my next question, was about the process. How many iterations of fabric, for lack of a better word, design, the idea of the fabric on the canvas, how many do you go through before you decide to glue?
a lot.
Okay.
This piece took months and months and months. So
okay.
Like with painting, and like with a lot of art, you want to have the feeling with things that are more expression, like, you know, you want to have the feeling that it just was thrown down. But it when you try and do that, it doesn't work. So it's very hard to kind of get there. Yeah, it's just a process of moving things around, coming in the studio and going, no, that's not going to work, changing things out. This particular piece seemed to take longer than most.
Yeah, the Pollock, making the Pollock comparison is an excellent one, in that I think there's a huge misconception about his work and de Kooning. I mean, any of those sort of abstract expressionists, I know that they didn't particularly like that term, but you're exactly right. That idea that it looks as if it's just been splattered without any rhyme or reason. Even Max's work, you look at it, but you realize that there's a definite thought process behind where different shapes go and where different colors go and where different lines go, that is integral to that,
right,
that the artist can do. Although, as you say, in looking at this piece, I don't particularly think that you just threw it there, but there is an easy, I love that you used the word, did you say seductive? There's this easy flowing sort of gentleness about it. I'm not really sure, but did you do it flat or did you do it vertically?
No, they're hanging as I do them, and it's not easy. Then I put them up, so I'll hang them, but then I have to put them back on the ground to get behind them. And it's never flat because I can't really see it like that.
So a definite labor of love then, because it really incorporates so much of your heart in each piece. It
does. And I, once in a while, in any series that I've ever done, once in a while, something will just come together fast. It's just one of those days, and you went into the studio and you threw something on and you're like, oh my God, that's it. But it's not the case always, or else, you know, you'd be making art in a minute kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah, and I know the artist Robert Ryman, who does all white paintings, and he said that was his goal, to make the viewer think that he just threw the white on, but he would spend, you know, months and months and months of layers and layers and layers and
Yes.
figuring out the right white. So not comparing myself to him, but to uh that's what I always try and get. And I'm
That Rothko building up of layers that, you know, when you look at it, it looks like two geometric pieces, but in actuality, it's layers and layers and layers of paint and time and emotion. I think, you know, that's the key, is that this is a very evocative piece for you. And in telling your background and your story and the lead up to it, I feel that that really helps. You know, it's one of those things like, do I need to know a lot about the piece to appreciate it? Do I need to know absolutely nothing about the piece to appreciate it? I think this kind of work will resonate with a lot of people just because they have experienced fabrics like this before, you know?
right. I think of all the materials that I've worked with, that this works well for me for whatever reason. You know, art is a language like the opera or other things, and I understand this language because I really, for whatever reason, I've worked with, you know, fabric and sewing, and I was printmaking and sewing into the paper, and I've done a lot of different things, but this really resonates with me on all sorts of different levels. And so yeah, it works for me. I also consider myself a minimalist, and I never seem to get into that maximalism. I will throw things on and then just come in the studio and take them all off. My eye is very clean, and I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's how I see things. I was a graphic artist for years, and I was always like that, even as a young person. Very
Sure. A lot of people feel that that's a direct correlation to your mental state. You know, that idea that when you're very minimalistic, whether it's, you know, the way that your house is decorated or the way that you do your work or the way you dress, whatever it is, that decluttering of your brain results in the way that you live your life. That's my philosophy on it. I'm
yeah,
really,
that's interesting.
yeah,
When
moving toward it.
my studio gets so messy, and in a few days it gets crazy, and I always have to kind of stop and kind of get it a little bit organized, because my brain, when I walk in and it's so messy, I kind of can't think straight. It's just,
Right.
yeah, it's just it's my personality. And
Yeah, it becomes a bit of a block. So
yeah.
well, I thank you so much. These are exquisite, but again, as we were chatting, absolutely do not reflect the magnitude of their impression when you walk into the gallery. And I'm so pleased that they are positioned where you say they are, because that's something. I mean, it's a good gallery. The main gallery is a good sized space. And so when you have something as vibrant and as three-dimensional as this, when you first walk in, it's very, very inviting. And so I am sure curatorially Max had, you know, the intention was very, as it is with everything that he does, the intention was very, very intentional.
I'm so happy to hear that. I had come into the show 2 days before the opening. I just wanted to check my pieces, because when transporting, I just want to make sure that everything was okay. And yeah, I felt like I mean, I know they're my own pieces, but I felt like I couldn't breathe. I walked in and thought it was just so beautifully curated, the whole show. It's a beautiful show, so.
That's one of the other things I think that I've learned to appreciate. And even though I've moved away, that idea that when the pieces become, when the pieces are there at the museum, the staff really is very, very thoughtful and careful about the way that they're handled, the way that they're hung, the way that they're, not that you can affect what the viewer sees, but I do think their placement near other work is really, really smart about different elements of different artists' work picking up, and then it becomes this thread that moves through the entire gallery, so that when you're done and you walk out the door, there's a sense of cohesiveness of all the work, even though they're separate.
Absolutely. It is definitely there, and I'm very picky, and I've been to a lot of museums, galleries, and that's what I was saying. It's beautifully curated. It's so cohesive, which is very hard to do with all different artists who come from all different, walks of life, age-wise and everything.
Right. Well, thank you very, very much. I have a little end slide. So we really appreciate you coming out. One of the main reasons, again, for these talks is, well, it's twofold. One is that we still have some folks who can't come out to the gallery for whatever reason, to the museum, so they will miss seeing this. And when I post it to YouTube, I'll go ahead and put your website. Do you have a website or Instagram?
Yes.
I'll go ahead and make sure I include that so that people can see the other pieces in this series and also in the previous series that you've done, and follow you, because I'm sure everybody now's curiosity is piqued when you're talking about doing piece number 5.
Yes, I'm excited about that one.
Excellent. Well, thank you again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.